right, then you're good. You're good. Next quarter, Dr. Borgini is going to do reproductive and digestive. No, no, no. He's going to do renal and digestive. Then you'll see me again. It doesn't change. In quarter 4, I will go and do endocrine and all skeletal, musculoskeletal systems pathology with you again. Okay. So I wish I'd done all of them, but there's a little bit of interruption when it comes to quarter 3. All right. I will still catch up with you in quarter 4, and we'll study all together, all the physiology and pathology. Okay? All right. So listen. Yeah. So there is tremendous amount of interaction or link between what the heart does and what the lungs do. Okay? So these are two systems are intertwined and connected together. And you can even judge just by the way they are sitting in the thoracic cage, right? And their close proximity to each other. Okay? So we do have two circuits when it comes to circulation. Okay? The two circuits are the pulmonary circuit and the systemic circuit. Pulmonary circuit. It's a short circuit. So basically, all what the heart is doing is sending the blood from the right ventricle to the lungs for the purpose of oxygenation. Okay? So the entire purpose of this system is to send the blood to the lungs, get the lungs to fill it with oxygen, and return it back to the heart. Okay? So the entire purpose here. Okay? So what the heart is going to do is going to receive the blood from the systemic circulation. So the blood is going to come to the heart. Oh, here is the blood that we already used. This is the product that we used, but we want to recycle. We want to refresh. We want to make it usable to the tissues. Here, Mr. Heart, receive the blood, fill it with oxygen, give it back to us. Okay? So that's the pulmonary circuit. After that is finished, after that step is done, and the lungs did their job and filled the blood with oxygen and eliminated carbon dioxide from it, so now the heart is going to take that blood and send it back, return it back to the centers, which is the tissue and organs. Okay? And that's going to be the start of a larger system, which is known as the systemic circulation. That's going to be the start of the systemic circulation. So the start of the pulmonary circulation is on the right ventricle. That's where it kicks in, the start. So it goes from the right ventricle and it ends in the left atrium. The systemic circulation starts from the left ventricle and ends in the right atrium. Okay? Those are your two circuits. Now, the comparison between these two systems are going to be very important for understanding pathology. Okay? What are we talking about here? We're talking about two things. We're talking about pressure, resistance. Pressure and resistance. Pressure and resistance. Because remember, what you are doing when you think about the cardiovascular system, you have to think about hydrodynamics. Hydrodynamics. Okay? Hydrodynamics. One of my professors at UAB, University of Alabama, Birmingham, when I did my advanced studies in medicine, when you come to his lab, all you see, because he did cardiovascular, all you see in his lab is crazy. There is nowhere to step. All he has tubes and water going from circuit to circuit because he was studying dynamic and circulation. All the entire lab is just filled with tubes. Because hydrodynamics, exactly what the heart is doing. Which is any differences in the pressure, which one is having more resistance, which one have a less resistance, and so on. I'm going to walk you through those. But generally speaking, the pulmonary circuit is a shorter circuit. You're sending the blood nearby. So you have to appreciate that the pressure has to be low because I'm just sending the blood nearby. I don't need that much mass pressure. Okay? But I also don't need that much of a resistance. And that's why when we talk about COPD and asthma and all these diseases, anytime you have a resistance in the lungs, that's not good because that's going to prevent the heart from sending the blood easily to the lungs. Okay? Systemic circulation has more pressure. The pressure in the systemic circuit is higher because you are talking about tiny, tiny capillaries in the skin, in other organs, in the liver, in the brain, and so on. And these tiny, tiny circuits contribute to tremendous amount of resistance. Okay? That's why the heart has to work very hard to send the pressure, to send the blood to overcome this pressure. Okay? All right? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to draw the circuits. We might want to do one, so we want to make it rowdy, and I can show you invisible body, and I have lots of animation and so on. Yeah? All right, so basically what you want to do, remember the heart is the palm. Okay? So it's going to be my heart. I always try to do it like tilted to the left, because that is exactly what it is. Okay? So the heart is sitting in the mediastinum, in the middle. The base of the heart, which is the larger part, like in the second, right, the second intercostal space, and that's part what you're going to do when you do the visceral diagnostic and auscultation, all that. That's why we hear the heart in these areas. So that's basically, that's where the base of the heart. The apex, I'm going to leave this finger here to show you the apex. The apex is tilted slightly to the left, okay? The level of the fifth intercostal space, right there, okay? So that's why I try to do like slightly tilted, okay? So basically this is what the heart, so what we want to do, we want to have chambers. Our chambers are going to be the four chambers, and you already know, right? So we're going to just cross like this to the middle, and the upper chamber. Okay, that's it, done. Okay? So basically what I do have here, I have four chambers, four rooms basically, right? So you have two superior and two inferior. Two superior, two inferior chambers or rooms. The superior chambers, these upper chambers, these are receiving chambers. Right? Always think about them. These are the ones that receive the blood. These are the receiving chambers. The two lower ones, the two ventricles, these are the discharging chambers. Okay? Although we're going to talk about it like this, but you have to remember the heart have rhythmicity. It works in the normal physiology. It's very rhythmic. Although we're going to discuss them separate, but the two atria contract at the same time, and the two ventricles contract at the same time. So contraction, relaxation. Contraction, relaxation. So the one is contracting, the other one has to be relaxed. Okay? Because what they are doing, the last thing you want to do, you want to be contracting both upper and lower chamber at the same time. That's not going to serve the purpose of receiving the blood. In order for you to receive the blood, whoever is receiving the blood has to be relaxed. Whoever is sending the blood has to be contracted. Okay? And that's why you have the rhythmicity. Contraction, relaxation. Contraction, relaxation, and so on. Okay? So these are going to be your two atria. These are going to be your two ventricles. Going to be right. I'm going to write them down. It's going to be my right. Always think about in anatomical position. Right atria. Going to be my right ventricle. This here is my left atria, or atrium, I should say. This is going to be my left ventricle. Okay? Left ventricle. Okay? All right. So now let's talk about, I'm going to use blue. So we always designate blue for the venous blood. Okay? So what I need here, I'm going to need three ingredients. Okay? What I'm going to need is one, bringing the blood from the upper extremities, head and neck. Upper extremities, head and neck. And that's going to be my superior vena cava. Superior superior vena cava, superior vena cava, superior vena cava. So you're going to write superior vena cava. Okay? Bringing the blood from upper extremities, head and neck, and so on. Okay? Now, from the lower extremities and abdomen, I'm going to need this guy. These are the main big muscles. It's going to be my inferior vena cava. Inferior vena cava. Okay? Superior vena cava, inferior vena cava. Bringing the blood from upper extremities, lower extremities. Upper extremities, superior vena cava. Lower extremities, inferior. Do not forget about the heart. Okay? The heart itself has its own circuit, its own blood supply. Okay? As an organ, has its own blood supply. Okay? So these blood vessels that supply the heart or nourish the heart itself, they're right there, right at the heart. So it's not part of the circuit. It's not part of the pulmonary circuit or the systemic circuit because you want to supply the organ that does the function for you. And that's known as the coronary circuit, coronary vasculation, right? So the coronary blood vessels, which I'm going to go over again to remind you or review it with you, is made of arteries and veins as well. So arteries supplying the blood to the heart, veins draining the blood from the heart. Okay? All that blood that's drained from the heart is going to be collected in a sinus. So remember the word sinus. Sinus, you're going to see the word sinus again and again and again. Sinus is used in medicine or in anatomy and physiology twice. Sinus is a cavity in a bone. For example, like somebody will tell you, I have a sinus infection, or my sinuses are acting up because we have sinuses in the skull. It's a cavity. Sinus is a cavity in a bone or in the skull. Okay? So, and these are for our frontal sinuses, maxillary, and so on. So that's a cavity in a bone known as a sinus. Okay? A sinus is also, you're going to use it widely in the cardiovascular system. Basically, it's a vein that happens to be wide and very thin. It has very low resistance. Why? Because it's a point of blood return. You see, there is lots of sinuses. You're going to study them. Lots of in the brain, for example, we have lots of sinuses. They drain the brain. Right? In the heart, we also have a sinus that drains the blood from the heart. And that's known just as a coronary sinus. The coronary sinus. And I will show you later. That coronary sinus has an opening in the back. On the posterior aspect of the heart, there is a hole here in the atrium, in the right atrium, that drains the blood from the heart. That's called the coronary sinus. Coronary sinus. Coronary sinus. Coronary sinus is a sinus or is a vein that returns the blood from the heart. After the heart, we use oxygen in that blood, and now it's sending it back as well. So basically, the circuit start, the systemic circuit is going to finish here, and our blood is coming from the superior vena cava, inferior vena cava, coronary sinus. Okay? Superior vena cava, inferior vena cava, coronary sinus. So that's all. So the right atrium is not getting any more blood than that. Superior vena cava, bringing the blood from upper extremities in the neck. Inferior vena cava, bringing the blood from lower extremities and abdomen and so on. All that. So the food that you just digest, you had breakfast, for example, at some point all that nutrients that is being in your breakfast is going to find its way into the liver. The liver is going to detoxify and send that blood, add that blood to the inferior vena cava, sending it to the heart. Okay? All right. So between the right atrium and the right ventricle, there is a valve that we talked about, right? So it's going to be my tricuspid valve. This is going to be tricuspid valve. When the blood fills here, 70% of the blood is just going to sweep in, just by gravity, like boom, right there. Okay. The last portion, the last 30%, the atria is going to contract and squeeze it in. Okay.
So the blood from the superior vena cava, inferior vena cava, and the pulmonary sinus is finding its way to the right atrium. That blood from the right atrium is going to come to the right ventricle. Now, this is going to be the start of our pulmonary circuit. The right ventricle that's where the short circuit is going to stop. Okay. So basically, from here, what you're gonna have, I'm gonna do this guy. Again, I'm using blue because that's is not oxygenated blood, so it's gonna get out right there. This is going to be my pulmonary trunk. Now, we use the word trunk for usually blood vessels that are going to divide or going to differ going to be known as ascending, and then it's going to make an arch like this, and this arch here is going to be known as the aortic arch. And that's going to be the start of the systemic circulation. As soon as you get out here, you're going to have blood vessels exiting out, okay? 3 of them exiting out. Of course, the very first 2 blood vessels are going to be the coronary vessels, right and left coronary arteries, supplying the heart itself, okay? And that's going to be your start of the systemic circulation. So all this blood is going to go to the organ systems and all that. And these organ systems, all the organ systems in the body is going to use that blood, is going to strip out oxygen out of it and fill it with carbon dioxide and send it back. So gradually, so going to be all my organ system here, organ system. I'm going to use that blood. And this blood is gradually going to be stripped of its oxygen, and that's why I'm doing blue now. And I'm going to send it here, and I'm going to send it all the way. I'm going to connect to these blood vessels right there. See what's happening? So you use it, you facilitate for the tissues to be able to work, because you need oxygen in order for the tissues to work or burn the fuel that they receive, the food. What they're going to do, they're going to need the oxygen. They strip the oxygen out of the blood, facilitate the metabolism, and they end up sending carbon dioxide. So it's going to be in here, you're going to fill this with carbon dioxide, CO2, and you're going to take oxygen out of it, and you use it, you send it back. And that's going to be the end of the systemic circuit. So the systemic circuit started in the left ventricle, blood is going to be used, and then it's going to end in the right atrium. Okay? So those are the 2 circuits. 2 circuits, one shorter with lower resistance, that's going to be the pulmonary circuit. Another one is longer, it's massive, and that's going to be your systemic circulation. Okay? Systemic circulation. Any questions on the circuits? I might find, I will probably find a presentation on it, and we can do it like from a presentation point of view. Because if you see the visual component, is going to be more revealing than my drawings.
As a society, we rely on complex transportation networks in order to supply and transport important goods and materials.
Yeah, that's a good word. I like that. See how they started? I love these people. Transportation. That's exactly sums it all. So basically, the cardiovascular system is a transportation system. So basically, it sends oxygen, because I zeroed in oxygen, all that one, lungs and everything. But it also transports tremendous amount of other materials, hormones, nutrients, toxic materials, the good stuff and the bad stuff. All what the cardiovascular is doing is transport. Basically, it's your transport system between the organs and tissues and yeah, all of them connecting together by this unique transport system.
The same idea goes for the human body. Here, the circulatory systems form a complex transportation network, which allows movement of important materials, such as oxygen, around the body. This circulatory system has two divisions, the cardiovascular system and the lymphatic system. Now, let's get our blood flowing and focus on the cardiovascular system.
I didn't mention the lymphatic system. Okay? Now, the cardiovascular system is the one that is responsible for sending all the materials and receiving all the materials from other organs and tissues, and it's a distribution system. Okay? The lymphatic system is kind of a link between the tissues and the cardiovascular system. Okay? Remember this. Anytime you transport fluid, anytime you are, so imagine you are having a garden and you're hauling water in buckets, right? You have a tendency to do what? Some of the fluid more than likely is going to spill, right? So that's exactly what I wanted to remember the lymphatic system for. So anything that while the cardiovascular system is doing and busy doing its transportation stuff, some of the fluid is going to spill out, either from the capillary or from the tissues. And that's what the function of the lymphatic system comes in. Some of that fluid that leaked out from the tissues when you are doing the process of transportation is going to be picked up by the lymphatic system and sent back or returned to the cardiovascular system. That's one of the functionality of the lymphatic system. One of its functions is basically sweeps out after the cardiovascular system, cleans up after the cardiovascular system. Okay? That's one of the functionality. The other function of it is linked to the immune system. So it has two legs. One leg is the sweeping behind the cardiovascular system, cleaning up the mess that the cardiovascular system created. All that lymph fluid, basically, need to be returned back because we can't afford to lose that. It's about 4 liters a day that you lose from the systemic circulation just going out of the tissue. So that needs to be swept out and returned. Of course, before you return it, what the lymphatic system does, it has the lymph nodes. You hear about lymph nodes? The lymph nodes are stations, purification stations. Before you send that fluid back to the cardiovascular system, you want to ensure that you are not sending any harmful substance in it. So you clean it up, right? Clean it up and destroy any bacteria or any infection in it, and then send it back to the lymphatic system, to the cardiovascular system. That's what the lymphatic system does. The other function is the part connected to the immune system, okay? Cardiovascular and lymphatic.
The term cardiovascular can be broken down into cardio, meaning heart, and vascular, meaning blood vessels. So the cardiovascular system consists of the heart.
This is the unique graph. Of course, I can't draw a graph like this. This is like very good done, very well done. Showing me the two circles, right? So basically, if you look here, so this is what the right atrium is. That's my right atrium. So you have a superior and inferior vena cava. And of course, they are not showing the coronary sinus. Don't forget about it. So it's going to be, this is going to be the start. Superior vena cava, inferior vena cava, okay? That's going to be bringing the blood back from the systemic circulation. Right here, this is the left, this is the right ventricle, sending the blood out. This is the pulmonary trunk. And you can see immediately what's going to happen is going to bifurcate or divide. One going to the left lung, one going to the right lung. Okay? In the lungs, you're going to fill the blood with oxygen, right? Oxygen here, and now notice they did it very well. 1, 2, 1, 2, because really you have 4. You have 4 pulmonary veins bringing the blood back to the left atrium. Go ahead.
Can you explain what capillaries?
Oh, capillaries. So basically, a capillary is the way you send. For example, this is my venous blood, right? So I'm going to send. This is going to be my blood vessel, right? So blood vessel is just a tube. What is going to happen? This tube is going to. I should do this way. Because if I'm talking about the oxygenated blood, so the oxygenated blood is going to be by artery, right? What a capillary is, this artery is going to start to divide, going to start to divide. It's going to divide multiple times, here, 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 so many times. A capillary is a network of tiny, you go from an artery to an arteriole. Basically, an arteriole is a tiny artery. Okay? So you're going to be dividing, make it very, very tiny. Because in this blood, it's just a tube sending the blood out. But what you want to do, you want to be able to exchange the nutrients and oxygen and components of what you have inside the blood with the tissue. So when you come to the tissue, you're going to make it like very, very tiny circuits like this, very tiny blood vessels. And these blood vessels, because they are very tiny, are going to allow for the materials to exit out. So they are very permeable. The word permeable, that means they are leaking. The blood vessel is not leaking. The capillary is leaking. Okay? It has opening, holes in it. These holes known as fenestration. Right? So this fenestration, tiny opening, allow for the stuff to leave and come back. Leave and come back. So basically the stuff here is going to leave out from these capillaries. It's going to leave. We are at the level of the tissues here. So I'm going to let the stuff leave out. And at the same time, I'm going to collect some of the stuff from this, right? I'm going to collect some of the stuff going in here. And then after what's going to happen after this is an artery, it's an arteriole. What's going to happen, again, by the same token, I'm going to have lots of tiny venules, and these venules are going to merge together to give me a vein. So I change from red to blue. So this here, where I have the stuff. Now here, I collected the stuff, and now I'm sending it back. This section is known as a capillary. So a capillary, basically, is a network of venules and arterioles together, connected together, for the purpose of exchange. You want to exchange, because it doesn't serve you if you just have a tube, and that tube is filled with stuff, but you are not able to give it to the tissues or collect the stuff from the tissues. Okay? So in order for you to be able to give and collect, you want to have open holes. And that's what the capillary is. What you see here, this is what the capillary is. See here, in the pulmonary, in the lungs, you have a capillary. In the tissues, you also have capillary, right? It's just a manifestation of one of them to show you what's happening. So the capillary is an area where you're going to facilitate exchange. Okay? Give and yeah. That's going to be your capillary. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Oh, okay, good. Let's go back a little bit.
This circulatory system has two divisions, the cardiovascular system and the lymphatic system. Now, let's get our blood flowing and focus on the cardiovascular system. The term cardiovascular can be broken down into cardio, meaning heart, and vascular, meaning blood vessels. So, the cardiovascular system consists of the heart and blood vessels, which together make up the blood transportation network of the body that carries nutrients, oxygen, and waste products to and from cells. The heart is a muscular organ that lies in the chest, and it pumps blood through the network of blood vessels in the body. It's composed of 4 chambers, a right and left atrium, as well as a right and left ventricle. Next are the blood vessels, which are tube-like structures that carry the blood being pumped by the heart. Arteries are the blood vessels that carry oxygen-rich blood away from the heart to supply the body with oxygen and nutrients. And veins carry carbon dioxide-rich blood and waste products from other parts of the body back into the heart. The blood running through these blood vessels also carries signaling molecules, called hormones, which allow for communication between organs and organ systems. Lastly, blood helps regulate body temperature. For example, when it's really cold outside, the blood vessels lying close to the skin constrict to reduce blood flow, saving the heat within the body. Now, there are 2 main networks, called the pulmonary and systemic circulation, that allow for blood circulation between the heart and the tissues in our body. In the pulmonary circulation, oxygen-depleted blood from body tissues runs from the right atrium to the right ventricle of the heart into the right and left pulmonary arteries, which carry the blood into the right and left lungs. This is the one exception where arteries carry oxygen-depleted blood. Here, the blood dumps carbon dioxide and receives fresh oxygen via gas exchange. Then, the blood runs back through 4 pulmonary veins to the left atrium, where it passes into the left ventricle. This is the one exception where veins carry oxygen-rich blood.
So remember, the terms we're using for arteries and veins are directional terms. Anytime you are sending blood away from the heart via a vessel, regardless of the type of the blood in that vessel, we call it an artery. And that's why the pulmonary artery is an artery because it's leaving the heart, although it carries deoxygenated blood. Okay? Pulmonary veins, like we said talking, they are veins because they are bringing the blood back to the heart. It's a directional term. Although they carry highly oxygenated blood. Okay?
Now, this is where the systemic circulation begins, pumping oxygen-rich blood into the body's largest artery, called the aorta. Along its course, the aorta gives off smaller arteries that gradually branch into smaller vessels called arterioles. Near the body tissues, these arterioles further divide into smaller vessels called capillaries. These capillaries form small networks called capillary beds in which blood flow is reduced. This reduction in blood flow allows the exchange of gases, nutrients, and waste products between the blood and tissues.
Imagine, what is that sport called? Sport when there is a runner and that runner is holding up a tag and is going to give it to another, and that's when the person is going to run.
Relay race.
Whatever that sport is. Whatever that sport is, what do you notice at the moment of exchange? There is slow down. Make sense? Because you cannot exchange in a rush. Same thing here. You're trying to exchange nutrients and pick up stuff. So that's why in the capillary, you can't let the blood just move very fast. The fast the blood is going to move in the capillary, it doesn't allow for exchange. That's why you want to make sure the pressure in the capillary has to be very low. Make sense? You want to slow down because you want to facilitate the process of exchange. Make sense? And that's why the capillary, so you branch from arteries to the arterioles and then the capillary, and you want to slow down as well. And that's why the pressure has to be very low in the capillary to facilitate the process of exchange. Okay?
Now, after this interchange of substances occurs, the capillaries regroup to form venules, which eventually drain into veins, and eventually into the 2 largest veins called the superior vena cava and the inferior vena cava, which collect blood from the entire body and empty into the right atrium. And once more, the pulmonary circulation cycle restarts. Okay, now let's pause for a second and see if you can identify the chambers of the heart and the course of blood through the pulmonary and systemic circulations.
Okay. He said pause. Let's pause. What is A? Right atrium. What is B? Huh? Left atrium. Left atrium. What is C? Right ventricle. And D? Very good.
Awesome. I'm going to assume you got them all right, so let's move on. Blood vessels often connect to each other, forming networks called anastomoses. These connections may be between an artery and a vein, called an arteriovenous anastomosis, between 2 arteries, called arterio-arterial anastomosis, or between 2 veins, called a veno-venous anastomosis.
So anastomosis, the word anastomosis is a good word for you to remember. Okay? Anastomosis. Now anastomosis means basically you are creating a network. Okay? A network. And as is mentioned here, it could be between an artery and a vein, or between 2 arteries and between 2 veins. Basically, it doesn't matter, but basically what you are doing, you are linking stuff, like making a web, basically, right? Like a spider web, okay? example, in the heart, remember when we talked about coronary circulation? We said we have tremendous amount of anastomosis. Why? Because these arteries, they want to make sure, two organs, they are very known for their massive anastomosis, the heart and the brain. Because you want to make sure if there is one artery blocked, you've got to divert the blood through another artery to ensure that segment or that part of the tissue is getting this blood, okay? Which is very good because sometimes you have a narrowing or damage or a block of an artery, you are still rerouting the blood through another artery or another route, and that's what is known as anastomosis. The venous anastomosis is known for the drainage. Certain organs also, for example, the liver. The liver is very, all the GI tract, by the way, all the GI tract is very rich in venous to venous anastomosis because you want to drain tremendous amount of blood and ensure that you collected everything. That's why you have this wide network there. So that's what the word anastomosis means. Okay, anastomosis. Basically, it's a link or a web which is very rich in connection between different entities.
Let's start with arteriovenous anastomosis, which allows direct flow of blood from the arterial to venous side of circulation without the intervention of a capillary bed. These types of connections occur in some skin regions between arterioles and venules where they serve to retain the body heat. Now, in some cases, the main blood vessel supplying a tissue can become blocked. Here, arterial-arterial and veno-venous anastomoses provide possible detour routes called collateral circulation to ensure structures distal to the blockage receive ample blood supply. An example of collateral circulation is the circle of Willis in the brain.
Very good.
Sometimes blood vessels may form an anastomosis, but it's ineffective or insufficient. These vessels are called functional terminal arteries. Here, an obstruction to the main artery supplying a tissue may possibly cause tissue death. An example of these arteries is the anterior spinal artery, which runs on the anterior aspect of the spinal cord. Also, blood vessels may not form anastomoses at all. These vessels are called true terminal arteries. An example of a true terminal artery is the central retinal artery of the eye. Since there is no anastomosis here, a blockage in the central retinal artery can cause blindness. Now, blood may also flow through two capillary beds before reaching the heart. The venous system connecting these two capillary beds is called a portal venous system.
This is important. Later on, you will see portal. Anytime you hear a portal system, it's a drainage, it's a vein. It's always going to be a vein that runs between two capillary systems. Because in real life, capillary, usually it's a link between an artery and a vein. Okay, so you go from an artery to arterioles, venules, and then a vein. If you are connecting two capillaries, instead of having a capillary going to drain into a venule, but you are not draining into a venule, you are draining into another capillary. Getting the blood from a capillary, but you are sending it to another capillary. The vessel between the two is going to be known as a portal. So between these two capillary, the one in the middle is going to be known as a portal. And that's why later on, when you do the GI tract, you're going to talk about the hepatic portal system. Okay? In the brain also, we have tremendous amount of portal systems between the hypothalamus and the anterior pituitary gland. We have a portal system. Why? Because you have a capillary, and then instead of going to systemic circulation, you are going to another capillary. So anytime you have a link between a capillary and another capillary, in the middle, you're going to have what is known as a portal system, and that portal is usually a portal vein, connecting two capillaries, as you see here.
The most prominent example of this system is the hepatic portal venous system, which directs the nutrient-rich blood from the capillary beds of the digestive tract to the capillary beds of the liver.
So basically, here, showing you the GI tract, all the nutrients, okay, because you just ate, you consume food, had a nice breakfast, all that food is going to be digested, and then from there, all the nutrients are going to be collected this capillary system, right? But instead of sending it to the cardiovascular system, what I need to do, I want to send it to another capillary in the liver, okay? Because I want to make sure there is no toxic material. Because the last thing you want to do, you want to collect the food or the nutrients at that point, not food, the nutrients that this person consumed and send it into the systemic circulation. That would be a disaster because God knows what this person consumed. What you want to do, you want to ensure there are no toxic materials in there, okay? So in order for you to do that, you want to send it to the liver. And in the liver, in order for the liver to do its work, the liver needs another capillary. So you're sending one capillary, another capillary. The vein between them, you see the light blue here, that's called the hepatic portal vein. Hepatic portal vein. Hepatic portal vein. Okay? This is a very good example.
This allows the liver to filter the nutrients and other materials absorbed in the intestines for any toxins or harmful material before returning the blood to the heart. All right, as a quick recap. The cardiovascular system consists of the heart and the blood vessels. It regulates the body temperature and carries oxygen and nutrient-rich blood to all tissues, and removes carbon dioxide and waste products from them. This system is broken down into the pulmonary and systemic circulations. The pulmonary circulation is between the heart and the lungs, while the systemic circulation is between the heart and the rest of the body. Anastomoses are connections between blood vessels that serve as backup in case of an occlusion of an artery or vein. The arteriovenous anastomosis is a direct connection between the arterial and venous system, without the normal capillary bed in between. Lastly, portal venous systems are venous systems that link two capillary beds.
All right. Good. Any questions? Yeah. All right. Okay. So let's take a break. We'll do attendance first, though. All right.
Oh yeah, this isn't like an official iPad, this is just a Bluetooth one, it works the same. It was only to help. That's what it's thing I could box. And I have two of them, so it's like.
All right. 45 minutes. Take a break. Take a break. Move around. Eat something. Drink something. All this water. Did you need the water? Oh, okay. Good, good. Yeah, 10 minutes. Yeah, let's do 10 minutes. And while you are taking a break, think of any questions you want me to talk to you about. Yes, ma'am.
I do have one question.
Of course.
Quiz question.
Uh-huh.
So it's, this one asks you to do with blood from plants.
Which is the question?
Go over the whole thing. Every time I took it, it was really hard, like, I always got a 2 out of 2, I had to put the whole thing. But I think it's just, I usually
What is the structure responsible for transport of blood from the lung? Actually, it has oxygen in it.
yeah,
What quiz is this?
it's, I would love to see that. I'll go back and check it out.
Yeah, I'll let you know. I'll correct that now.
Yes.
This is a capillary. Then this is the capillary. They stain. Yeah, it's stain. Superior and inferior is Come with me. Come help me. We're gonna do it together.
The,
Oh,
he gave us-
everybody's done? It's 44:58? 44:58?
It's getting.
Let's correct it. Thank you for that, yeah. Because some of this is done by the small.
Yeah.
And I try to catch these questions and correct them.
Well, obviously,
No, that's good, yeah. So, let's do it. Tools, we have to correct it in the source.
yeah, I think I probably did.
And it's week 8.
Yeah.
What is the question say? Give me any word.
What structure is this?
Let's look for it. What structure? What
It's like off,
Come on.
yeah, it's kind of off what I'm supposed to like,
This one?
yeah, public health. Which is like kind of.
One structure is responsible for transport for
Oh, and you're checking.
oxygenated blood, because from the lungs is oxygenated, from the lungs to the heart. Then you have to solve it.
And that is right.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Because because pulmonary artery, that's wrong. Pulmonary veins is correct. Bronchial arteries is wrong. That's wrong. That's week 8. Oh, I have to. There's some people who take. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Week 8, right?
Yeah. But I'm not sure, like.
Yeah, they are. Oh, they are. They are until we can. Yeah, of course, yeah. Yeah, quizzes are going to be, yeah, what, I will close them down, the exam, yeah, week 11, yeah. But they will stay available until the end of week 8.
That's good to know because they're very useful and that makes you feel good.
Oh, yeah, of course.
We're getting to the crunch point and we're getting.
I know. Yeah. The last thing you want to be there, no.
Oh, no, I absolutely get it, but it's just sometimes our anatomy professor, he doesn't have a study guide or his quizzes open. He's just saying, go read the book, and it's like, it's, cool more stuff when it happens, right?
Yeah.
It's a very, it's good to see what you're doing.
Yeah, I haven't finished it, but I
Right.
went ahead and did them, a lot.
When you do your
Yeah,
evaluation,
so
right?
all of the ones that I have right now.
Yes.
I've been asked for a change.
I don't
This
think
one,
it sounds
yes.
like I'm
No.
I don't mean to sound like I'm trying to, but your classes are
But I
one of the better.
you saw that webpage with the, with the, he said that they were, mnemonics.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Oh, of course, yeah. Yeah. What I wanted to do, okay, the two classes should ideally go hand in hand. So we do anatomy there, then you come with me and you do physiology and pathology.
I actually, yeah, I said that I did
Right. You get it? Right. Right. And when we designed the courses initially, we said, okay,
Oh, okay.
It's good.
That was, fields of
What are you
changes.
covering?
So you're right, field
I
of
will
changes.
stress on the anatomy, but concentrate on the physiology.
Oh, no. It's like your eye looks, the wisdom of the Wednesday. Yeah, I turn it on, but I thought it was the off, I thought it was the left side.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. What I was saying, not to, your opinion matters because if you want to talk about it, you write about it, like about syncing the two classes together, have some coordination, have some like synchrony between the another class and the physiology class. That's what I want to feed. Yeah. No, it is possible. It is possible. If there is a call, if there is a desire from the students. Yeah. Right. Yeah, and that's part of their feedback. What we really appreciate is guys if you tell me. Yeah, tell me that feedback because I want you to leave these classes and other physiology what classes that you're part of. Not having to worry about it, because that's the way it's supposed to be. Like we're here to facilitate your learning, get you ready first for the board, and second for real life. So you have to be, it's very. Which is like in my head. There's no words. Right. Yeah, and that's why I try to incorporate more slides, multimedia images, presentations, videos. And that's what every psychologist teaching and learning will tell you that you have to rely on because they are different types of students. They are students who are visual. Right, absolutely. I'm fine for it. I'm finding. I'm not gonna stop. Somewhere. Yeah, if you go and talk in person, that would be great. Yeah. And she's always open for suggestions. Without, you don't have to make it like personal. Because oh, okay. You don't, just voice your opinion. And that's a part of the culture here is they listen. Not to everything, but not immediately, but at some point. The more people talk, the more. No, there's a lot of changes that are happening. People like what
I'm sorry, Jacob.
Right. Yeah.
I could still talk about that.
Of course, yeah, thank you so much for your feedback. It's important, it's important, because if you think about it, what's your, end of the day, what do you want to achieve, what do you want to achieve learning? So you want to make that, you want that, you love learning. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Okay, I'll put you. Thank you. All right, guys. Everybody's back. So, all right. So what? There is some correction on all of the quizzes. I made it. So sometimes if you see these quizzes because they are transferred from the original form by CETL. So if there is any typos or anything, let me know. But there's one question that. But anytime you change the question in the master, it will regrade all the quizzes, even the one that submitted before. It will regrade them and give you the correct. Okay, so all right. So the quickly is done. This one I have to get out of it. All right. So what else? Since we are talking about the cardiovascular system, how do you feel about the coronary circulation? Coronary circulation.
I want to go over it.
Want to go over it? Okay, very good. So let's do this. Let's go over the coronary circulation because on the coronary circulation we have so many pathologies. We have angina and we have the devastating one is the heart attack. Okay. Remember, one thing you have to keep in mind: the heart is a what we classify it as highly metabolic organ. So there are organs that they need their food and they need it now. I need my oxygen and I need it now. I don't need any delay. I can't tolerate any delay. I can't tolerate any decrease of the level of oxygen. That's what is classified as metabolic, highly metabolic organ. So the heart is one of them. The brain, of course, you can imagine is highly metabolic organ, so they need their blood supply. Okay. So what is happening here is the heart receives its blood supply from a system. That system known as the coronary circulation. Coronary circulation. Coronary circulation. Right at the tip, as soon as you, I'm going to draw it right there. So basically, what I'm going to do again, I'm going to do the heart, okay? Remember, we just said this, we have the aortic, this is my aorta, exiting out, like this. Right by the valves, right there, right at the very beginning of the aorta, right there. At the very, very beginning of the aorta, you're going to have two arteries. One going to the left, the other one going to the right. Okay? Right at the base of the aorta. And I'm going to show you in the presentation as well. Right at the base. So basically, the analogy you like give the students is, if you've been in the kitchen all day long, you have a guest that are coming later on in the evening, you've been standing in the kitchen all day long preparing that wonderful meal, right? You get to try it first. So basically, you're gonna, as you're cooking, you are trying some of the, making sure everything is fine and all that, right? So you are the tasting, or the first portion goes to you, okay? Same thing here in the heart. The heart is working hard on this blood that it receives and sends to the lungs and all that. So the heart has the favor of getting its blood supply right away via two coronary arteries, one going to the left, one going to the right. The one going to the left is massive. It's a larger one, okay? So in a way. And it supplies most of the left side of the heart. Remember everything we talked about today? We're saying the left side, left side. Even when we discussed valves, we discussed the valves from the left side, not the right side. We talked about the pathologies of the left valves, right? Like the mitral valve, the aortic lunar valve, because the left side is the start of the systemic circulation. Okay, so anything that impacts that big circuit is going to be detrimental for the entire health of the body. Okay, so the left side is two arteries are going to divide or bifurcate right away. So right is just going to march and going straight, right? Eventually they are going to link and make anastomosis. The left coronary artery, as soon as it's a shorter artery, as soon as it is out from the base of the aorta, is going to bifurcate or divide. One going into a circle, and we're going to call it that. We're going to call it an artery going to a circle. We're going to call it the circumflex. circumflex, your circumflex coronary artery. One is going to be coming down, dangling straight in the middle between the right side and the left side of the heart, and that's going to be the anterior interventricular. Okay, so it has lots of names. It has that's a main in anatomy. Usually, anatomists they love to call it the right anterior interventricular. Right?
So the circumflex comes off of, is that one the right side?
From the left
From
side.
the left is circumflex.
From the left. The left is short, and I will show you also invisible body.
The left common?
The left
The left common?
is not common, it's just called left coronary artery. It's going to divide. I'm talking, you're thinking about maybe the carotid, maybe. The carotid has a common. Yeah, but the coronary, no, we don't call it common. So it's just left coronary artery, left coronary artery, left coronary artery. I can show you, let me show you. Maybe, I have everything you need. I have to put my glasses on first because I don't have. Visible body.
So I don't have it.
Very good. See? All right. So see this here. This is the aorta. Let me get out of it so you can see what I'm talking about. So that's the aorta right there. Okay. So the aorta exiting. See right there. That's where the aorta is. These are the semilunar valves. Okay. 1, 2, 3 semilunar valves, and that's the aorta right there. To be able to show you these arteries, I have to remove this part. Let's remove this part. And I'm going to remove this part as well. Now you see, that's the base of the aorta right there. See the base of the aorta? And this is going to be your left coronary artery right there. See, left coronary artery? Now, it's short. See how short it is? That's the left coronary artery. It divides. Let me remove the veins. We don't need the veins. So, see, it divides. One circumflex, and the other one is the anterior. It's called anterior interventricular, or also known as LAD. The LAD stands for left anterior descending. Okay? This is the one who also gave it another name. Somebody remembers? The widowmaker, basically, because this one, when it gets blocked, it causes tremendous amount of damage to the left ventricle and to the septum, because what divides the right side and the left side, you have a septum. That septum is very important, and when it doesn't get its blood supply, in some cases it might rupture, and that will be like fatal, if you can imagine, right? So here you go. So going to be your coronary artery, left coronary artery. Left coronary artery is going to divide the circumflex, and the circumflex is going to go behind, and you can see it's a massive artery that supplies most of this part of the wall, right? And the anterior interventricle right there. So that's one. The second one is going to be this guy, which is the right. This is going to be my right coronary artery. It continue, and goes all the way to the back, and it captures everything that this one left over. So this one here is the left, the circumflex, right? And this one here is coming back to ensure that this part also has blood supply, okay? So this is oversimplification. It's more rich than that, but they didn't want to make it. They didn't want to make it like so busy. But these are going to be your two main arteries. They give lots of branches, of course. You can imagine. It gives branches here. It gives branches here. This is very important. And this one is highly important. It's called the marginal, right? And in the back, it gives the posterior interventricular. So you have anterior interventricular and posterior interventricular. Basically, you are developing a tremendous amount of anastomosis. That anastomosis is going to ensure that every single part of the heart wall is getting blood supply from one or the other. Okay? And sometimes if you have a blockage in one, then you're going to divert the blood in a different way to ensure that that blood is getting where it should go.
So the left one, the circumflex comes all the way around, but you're calling it short because it goes right around.
Right, because when we talk about left, see right there, it changes names. So it gives you different branches. So when you talk about just the left, we're talking about this guy, just from here to here, and then after it divides, it gets different names. So it becomes circumflex at this point, and it becomes here anterior. Okay, so all that blood, since we are at it. Let's see, all that blood eventually is going to be collected. See, this is going to be on the sinus. It's going to be your coronary sinus. See how wide it is? All the blood is going to be collected and it's going to end up coming back here in the right atrium. So you have superior vena cava and inferior vena cava, and in the back you have the coronary sinus, which all three organs. If I make it like this, lower, you can see them. Superior vena cava, inferior vena cava, and the coronary sinus. These are the three that open here in the right atrium, okay? To ensure that the blood is being supplied to the heart, at the same time is being drained from the heart. You supply it to the heart by the coronary arteries, right and left. And then they're going to branch and give you several branches. You drain the heart by the pulmonary veins, set of veins, which all of them are going to merge and giving you the coronary sinus. Okay? Good? Now let's do it in English. As I say, I think I have a presentation for you. Yeah, here we go. Coronary circulation. Now this is going to give you the percentage. Okay? Here it's a little bit detailed, which is good. Information is not going to hurt you. It's going to benefit you. So it's going to give you the percentage. Also, it's going to give you the dominance. Because again, we are 99.999% the same. But that's 0.1% creates tremendous amount of variation. So there are some people who are right side dominant, some people are left side dominant. Okay? So there is a difference in the branch, how these arteries branch. Okay? And that's something that cardiologists, if somebody has angina or myocardial infarction, that's something that cardiologists would do. Basically what they do, they're going to inject the patient with a dye, with a radioactive dye, to get a picture what type of arteries they have. The majority of the population is the system that I just talked about. So you have a right and left coronary artery, and from the left side, you get the circumflex and the anterior interventricular. However, there is a second population where the anterior interventricular is not a branch of the left coronary artery, but rather it's a branch of the right coronary artery. And these are going to be people who call them right side dominant. So the dominance on the right side. Go ahead.
Is that due to something that you do as far as lifestyle, or is that
Is something what?
there's something like that kind of change? Is that something that we do as far as the lifestyle?
No, that's genetics. That's your genes. Yeah, of course. The same thing you have, the color of your skin, the type of hair you have, color of your eyes, how high you are, I mean how tall you are, all that's genetics. And that's a variation, believe it or not. Believe it or not, that is crazy because if you talk about we are 99.9, when I talk about we, I'm not talking about people in America I'm talking about the globe, in the entire population in the globe. We are 99.9 similar. Doesn't matter your ethnicity or background or whatever. That's all the variation you see in all ethnic groups and all that. I don't use the word race because my belief is there is only one race on this planet, that's human race, okay? So, but there are distinct, right? That's 0.1% variation. That's only 0.1 variation, 1% variation, giving you this wide range of variation, believe it or not. That's how diverse the genome of the human being is, okay? So the presentation is gonna just go over what are the, now, right dominant, left dominant, if you are not a cardiologist, even if you are a cardiologist and not you are a cardio surgeon, and you want to perform surgery in these patients, nobody cares. But if you are going to open somebody, cut them open, you want to know before you open them, is it the right side or left side? Because which one you're going to repair, which one you're going to get, right?
Are any pathologies associated with the
Say it again.
is somehow pathologies associated with the being dominant with being?
That's an excellent question. Yeah. So people who are left side dominant, they tend to have tremendous amount of damage, massive damage if you have a blockage. But people who are the right side dominant is not, I mean, it's still bad. It's still myocardial infarction. It's still a heart attack, but not as bad when it's coming from the left side.
So are those the people that make it through the world?
Right, absolutely. Those are the people who are going to get out of it. Yeah. All right, so let's watch this.
Our hearts are responsible for sending blood throughout our body and bringing it back to our lungs in a constant exchange of oxygenated and deoxygenated blood. Here at Osmosis, we also think your hearts are responsible for starting with the heart and showing us love every time you watch one of our videos. But remember, the heart itself also needs its own blood supply, called the coronary circulation, which it gets from the right and left coronary arteries. The coronary arteries are embedded in fat and course across the surface of the heart just deep to the epicardium. Let's begin with the right coronary artery, or RCA, which has its origin in the right aortic sinus and passes to the right side of the pulmonary trunk. Close to its origin, the RCA gives a sinoatrial nodal branch, which supplies the sinoatrial node. The RCA then descends in the coronary sulcus. Along the way, it gives off the right marginal branch, which gets close to the apex but doesn't reach it and supplies the right border of the heart. After giving this branch, the RCA turns to the left and continues its journey in the coronary sulcus posteriorly. Here, the RCA gives yet another branch, the atrioventricular nodal branch, which supplies the AV node. The RCA usually gives the posterior interventricular branch, which descends in the posterior interventricular groove. This branch supplies areas of both ventricles and sends perforating interventricular septal branches into the IV septum. Finally, the terminal branch of the RCA continues for a short distance in the coronary sulcus. The left coronary...
We're talking about the coronary circles. Now, a sulcus basically is a groove. So and you can, if you visit the anatomized, you will be able to see. So basically, the vessel is sitting in a groove, and that groove in which the blood vessel is sitting is known as a sulcus. This is depression. When I say groove, that's basically like a room where the blood vessel is stuck in that area. Okay? That's what the sulcus is.
Coronary artery, or LCA, originates from the left aortic sinus and passes between the left auricle and the left side of the pulmonary trunk and gets in the coronary sulcus. At the superior end of the anterior interventricular, or IV, groove, the LCA divides into two branches. The anterior interventricular, or IV branch, sometimes called the left anterior descending, or LAD, and the circumflex branch. The anterior IV branch passes through the anterior IV groove to the apex, where it turns around the inferior border of the heart and typically anastomoses with the posterior IV branch of the RCA. The anterior IV branch supplies parts of both ventricles and the anterior 2/3 of the interventricular septum through septal branches. In many people, this branch gives rise to the lateral branch or diagonal artery, which descends to the anterior surface of the heart. Now, the circumflex artery runs in the coronary sulcus around the left border of the heart towards the posterior surface of the heart. On its way, it gives the left marginal branch, which also has many tiny branches that supply the left ventricle. Most commonly, the circumflex branch of the LCA terminates in the coronary sulcus on the posterior aspect of the heart prior to the crux of the heart. Okay, to wrap things up, RCA supplies the diaphragmatic surface of the heart, the right atrium, most of the right ventricle, the diaphragmatic part of the left ventricle, and it usually also supplies the posterior third of the interventricular septum, the sinoatrial node, and the AV node. The LCA typically supplies the left atrium, most of the left ventricle, part of the right ventricle, the anterior 2/3 of the IVS, including the AV bundle, through perforating IV septal branches and the sinoatrial node in some people. And the reason for all the sums and usuallys is because there is something called dominance of the coronary arterial system, which refers to whether the right or left coronary artery gives off the posterior interventricular branch. In 67 to 85% of people, the right coronary artery gives rise to the posterior interventricular branch, so the most common distribution is the right dominant pattern. In this case, the RCA and LCA are each in charge of about 50% of the heart supply. In about 8 to 15% of cases, LCA is dominant and the posterior IV branch comes from the circumflex artery. In 7 to 18% of people, there is codominance, and both RCA and LCA give rise to branches that run in or near the posterior IV groove. And if you thought that all on its own made each of us special, think that some people might have just one coronary artery. In others, the circumflex artery might have its origin in the right aortic sinus. 4% of people have an accessory coronary artery. Finally, the RCA gives the sinoatrial nodal branch 60% of the time and the AV branch 80% of the time, while LCA is responsible for the other scenarios. That's quite some variation. Even though the branches of the coronary arteries are considered to be functional end arteries, the heart does have the potential to develop collateral circulation. This typically occurs between the termination of the right and left coronary arteries in the coronary sulcus between the IV branches near the apex in 10% of normal hearts, and can potentially develop for all hearts. Alright, now where there are arteries, there are veins. So there are heart veins that empty into the coronary sinus, which drains into the right atrium, and some small veins that empty directly into the right atrium. On a posterior view, you can see the main vein of the heart is the coronary sinus, which is a wide vein that runs from left to right in the posterior part of the coronary sulcus. On its left side, on the anterior surface, it receives the great cardiac vein, which is the main tributary of the coronary sinus and drains the areas supplied by the LCA. The great cardiac vein begins as the anterior interventricular vein near the apex of the heart, which accompanies the anterior IV branch of the LCA towards the coronary sulcus. Then it turns left, and this second part of the great cardiac vein runs around the left side of the heart with the circumflex branch of LCA to reach the coronary sinus. Then there's the oblique vein of the left atrium, also called the vein of Marshall, sadly not named after the lovable character from How I Met Your Mother, which is a small vein that descends over the posterior wall of the left atrium and merges with the great cardiac vein to form the coronary sinus. Let's switch gears and look at some more veins on a posterior view of the heart. Here, the coronary sinus receives the middle cardiac vein, which accompanies the posterior interventricular branch, and the small cardiac vein, which accompanies the right marginal artery of RCA. These two veins drain most of the areas supplied by RCA. The left posterior ventricular vein and the left marginal vein also open in the coronary sinus. Some other veins begin over the anterior surface of the right ventricle, cross over the coronary sulcus, and end directly in the right atrium, or sometimes enter the small cardiac vein. Alright, as a quick recap, the heart receives arterial blood supply from the right and left coronary arteries and their branches, and venous blood is drained by the middle cardiac vein, the left marginal vein, as well as the left posterior ventricular vein, part of the small cardiac vein, and the oblique vein of the left atrium. Dominance of the heart refers to whether the right or left coronary artery gives off the posterior interventricular branch, where 67 to 85% of people are right coronary artery dominant. On an anterior view, you can see some of the vessels that supply the heart, such as the RCA and its right marginal branch, a bit of the LCA and the whole anterior interventricular branch of LCA, as well as part of the circumflex artery. You can also see the small cardiac vein following the right marginal branch, the anterior part of the great cardiac vein following the anterior interventricular branch, and finally a small part of the middle cardiac vein. On a posterior view, you can see the left posterior ventricular vein, the posterior interventricular artery, the middle cardiac vein, and the coronary sinus, which collect most of the venous drainage.
Okay, as you can see, there is a wide variation. There is a wide variation when it comes to the coronary blood supply. But for you, I mean, this is not an issue. You don't have to worry about this. As I said, like if a cardiologist trying to perform surgery, they need to know where they're gonna, what artery they're gonna repair, and what is happening, what is the amount of damage, what is the reduction of the blood supply, and what is coming from. Okay? But the coronary this actually gives us in a very good position right now, as we are finishing this class. Wednesday, what we're gonna do, we're gonna talk about, we're gonna go back and review angina, because angina is a condition where you have a reduction in the blood supply through these coronary arteries, right? However, when we talk about angina, remember, it's going to be a temporary reduction, temporary reduction. Infarction, that's where you have a damage, you have ischemia to the tissue. You have a tremendous amount of reduction. The reduction is so severe, it's going to lead to a death of the tissue, and that will be myocardial infarction. So Wednesday we'll review, we'll go back and review angina, because we only have 50 minutes. We do angina, myocardial infarction, all those from start to finish. And then on Thursday, next week, we're talking about next week, we will do the rest of the conditions, like pericarditis, the other pathology talked about. And that will be the end of our reviews. Make sure you remember that the quizzes are open, and they're going to stay open until midnight. It's going to be midnight of Sunday of week 10. So after that, they're going to close. That will be your final grade for the quizzes at that point. Okay? You can still take them. You can take, huh? You can.
You're going to close like altogether. You can go back and take.
You cannot. After midnight on Sunday of week 10, no. They will close. They will close down. So remember, Sunday, midnight, week 10, they will shut down. Until then, you are welcome to do them as many times as you want. As many times as you want. Okay? All right. Right. No, I don't know. The sum of the little quizzes plus the yeah, plus the
Some of them,
it must be this one.